Well, anyway, thank you all for your interest in the Samoa Medical Mission, and it's just been a really beautiful time today with Rick and Beverly sharing and Pele sharing from American Samoa. It's always amazing to see how God works all the various pieces together. I mean, it always reminds me of a beautiful orchestra. You know, we're just playing, each of us is playing our instrument, playing our part, and we just have to follow where God leads. And we may not see it at the time, but in the end, we'll be able to see how beautiful He worked it out. But anyway, we're talking about, you know, if you feel called to go serve on the 2017 summer mission, one of the big questions that comes up is, well, how am I going to afford to do that? And there are many different ways that we've done it over the years, and many different ways that other people do it. But although we're going to talk about finances, in reality, we're talking about faith. It is the key to everything we do for God, because God says without faith, it's impossible to be well-pleasing to Him. So our first part is to follow where He leads. As Rick was talking about from Jeremiah's life, that's the same with us. It's not where we end up during the time that we can see what's going on. It's being obedient. When God calls, we go. We don't have to know anything other than He said, go. Everything else He'll show in due time, and that is, as God has taught us as a family, what faith is for. If we knew the answers, it wouldn't be faith. So, with finances, for some of us, the financial part may be a little easier than for others. But God will give each of us a measure of faith that we need and a measure of grace to accomplish His work. And for us, we have always supplied a significant portion of our funding as an offering to the Lord. That's just our calling. God's called us. And then we've had friends and family and church support to help us. Other people may receive even more help from others, and that's great, because in essence, when we go over there to serve, it's not us that's going, we're going to serve on behalf of the Lord. And to do that, we need a team. And that's what the people who may support us financially and through prayer are for us. They're our team. And they are as big a part of going to Samoa as we are the ones that are being sent. And you can go back to the book of Acts, and you go back through the New Testament, and you'll see, especially with Paul, giving examples of that. How one church supports another, how one believer supports another in God's call. Because we're not all called to go, but we all called to serve. And our serving may be to support someone who is going. One thing we don't want to do is compare our way the Lord's leading us with how He's led somebody else, because that may not be the path He takes us. And not to get disappointed if we don't see the funds coming in as quickly as we'd hope. It's almost like Pele has said about the meetings. January, February, the meetings are a little sparsely attended, and they tend to pick up as we go forward, but we can't look with our eyes of flesh. We have to look with eyes of faith and trust that God is going to take us to the end in His time and His provision. That's another P from the study earlier, Rick. One thing we have recognized and realized, any way God takes us through it, it's going to require some personal sacrifice. We're going to have to sacrifice our time. We're going to have to sacrifice some of our finances, and especially sacrifice some of our modern comforts. That was the one thing I really had to go with the Lord on, because because of some physical injuries, can't handle heat very well. But when God said go, He said, trust me, I'll take care of it. And He always has. And that will be the same with the finances. Now, we have a few ways to address our finances. One is more traditional funding, where we may have a church that has a special mission fund. And that is always a great blessing, especially if they support missions that are outside their main calling. And as in Tomoa, often it is a independent mission compared to denominations. Then we also have our personal offerings. That's the money that God calls us to give above and beyond what we give to our local body that serves us and that we serve within. Then another thing is family and friends. And again, this is where we have to look at that we're building a team. We're not asking someone to give us money. This isn't for us. This is to do God's work and God's call. So when we go to speak with them, it has to be a personal conversation. It has to come from your heart. Online, there's many different websites and many different examples to do a fundraising letter and to do all these things. And those are great and good in their own context. But really, this is a personal call. God's called you personally, and I believe it's best to share that way God's leading you with those who would support you, and let them know how God's leading your heart, and not rely totally on a website or a somebody's fundraising letter model. Let people know what God's called you to do and show your heart to them. We've also had, especially in the past, folks, we have Mr. Steve and Miss Tina, and Mr. Steve loved to do eBay. So he'd always find good deals and stuff, and then he'd go put it back on eBay and make a little bit of money, and that was one of his ways to raise extra funds. But we all may have something laying around the house we don't need. We might want to sell it, put it on eBay, or just find other things. Think out of the box. Just follow God where He leads, and don't worry about all the finite details. My wife would say, she is a person who works with numbers and grants and stuff. So she's always meticulous about getting everything lined up in that process. But in this process, when we're following God, sometimes we just have to follow when we don't see how everything lines up. And we have to let Him lead us. Again, the biggest thing about this isn't the finances. It's the faith. And if you believe and you truly have a call that God's put in your heart to go on this mission, God will make it happen. But you have to do it His way. And it may not be comfortable. God often leads us in different directions to stretch us a little bit and to grow our trust and our reliance on Him. And this might be just another opportunity for you to do that. And that's pretty much what I have for the general things. I'm going to give you one personal example of how God had Julie and I think outside the box. And this was on the last year, the mission, 2016. God hadn't informed us ahead of time that we were going. We can't go every year because of our work schedules and time off and everything. So we'd gone in 2015, and God hadn't revealed that we would, He'd make some special arrangement for us to go the next year. So we had not been set aside extra money, finances for that particular purpose, which is normally, like I said, a big part of the way that we fund our trips to serve Him. But one day I was just sitting there, and God had given me a dream a couple nights in a row about the Samoa mission, and that there was need for encouragement. And I really didn't know what that meant at the time. Didn't really know how the team was shaping up or how it would shape up. But I started praying about it and contacted Eva and told her I was praying for him, and let me know if anything came up that was a need. And as that was going through, God just started putting on my heart that we needed to be part of the team, and we needed to plan to go. And so I was putting all of our numbers down on paper, and I was checking out our budget, and I was seeing where we could shift money around to make things happen. And no matter how I looked at it, it just wasn't going to work out, given our normal funding methods and our formal offerings from friends and other people who support us. And so I put my budget down, our savings in one column, monthly savings, and God's our offering to God in another column. And so normally we put, we give God His part, and then we put our savings in, and then extra money is to go out to eat or go to a movie or buy some clothes or whatever. But as I was looking at it, I wrote it down in the two columns, and I had January, June, and December, and I was like, there's no way we're going to mess this. So I started spinning the paper around. One day I was just sitting there spinning the paper. And it kind of was amazing. We think about our first fruits we give to God. And I think about it as each time money comes in, we give the first fruits. But as I spun the paper around and God kind of showed me the two columns parallel instead of being up like this, it changed my perspective. The first fruits He showed me were the first 6 months. And then I had to trust Him that the savings would be there the last 6 months. So what God showed me was, take all the money that you put aside for my work and take all the money in your savings for the last 6 months. That's my first fruits. Give that, and then the last 6 months is yours. That will go back into you. So it was just a whole new perspective for me. It wasn't mine. It wasn't comfortable when I first saw it. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. But that's God for you. He always takes us outside of our box, and He takes us to places that we would not otherwise go of our own accord. But again, don't let God, be disappointed that you didn't heed His call, and don't let what you've seen with other people change how you let God work in your life, because He works with each of us individually and uniquely, because He is that intimate with each of us. He knows how we're wired. He wired us, and He knows what it will take to change our perspective. So let Him lead, and you follow and trust.